Welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us live for today's Lunch and Learn, Land for Maine's Future, Protecting What Makes Maine Special. And thank you so much to all of you watching the recording. Before we jump into the policy side of this, I wanted to ground us for a moment. Most of us can probably picture a place in Maine that we return to, a trail we walk every season, a lake access you rely on, a working farm you pass all year, or woods you trust will still be there the next time you visit. Those places don't stay that way by accident. They exist because people make deliberate decisions to protect them, and for decades, one of the biggest ways Maine has done that is through the Land for Maine's Future program. So today we're going to talk about what the program has made possible and what it will take to make sure that it continues. And so with that, I'm so excited that we are joined by Eliza Townsend, the Maine Conservation Policy Director at Appalachian Mountain Club, Francesca Gundrum, the Director of Advocacy at Maine Audubon, and Luke Frankel, the Woods, Waters, and Wildlife Program Director and Staff Scientist at the Natural Resources Council of Maine. Thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Maggie Summers. I'm the Outreach Director here at Maine Conservation Voters and Maine Conservation Alliance. Our organizations represent more than 13,000 members and supporters dedicated to building a just, thriving future for all by acting on the climate crisis, protecting the environment, and safeguarding our democracy. MCA does that by bringing people and organizations together to educate, inspire, and advocate. And Maine Conservation Voters does that by advocating for equitable policies, holding elected officials accountable, and winning elections. And since 2020, this weekly online Lunch and Learn series has helped us advance all of those goals, creating a shared space to explore our environmental and social history, policy priorities, climate action movement, and more. And just a few notes before we dive into today's program. We'll hear from our presenters first, and then tackle your questions in the Q&A session at the end. You don't have to wait, though. Please send your questions to me or Kate Carpenter through the chat as they occur to you. We'll synthesize them and ask as many as possible following the presentation. We ask that you please not message the speakers directly so that they can focus on their presentation. And if you have any technical difficulties, please message Kate through the chat and she can help you out. This event is being recorded and the video will be posted to our YouTube channel later this afternoon, where you can find a bunch of other recordings from a number of different topics that we've presented on. So thank you so much to all of you. And Eliza, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you to the Maine Conservation Voters for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate folks attending today. I'm Eliza Townsend. I'm the Maine Conservation Policy Director for the Appalachian Mountain Club. We're a people-centered conservation organization. Our mission is the protection, understanding, and enjoyment of the outdoors. And you may know that we own 130,000 acres of forest land in Piscataquis County, which we manage for multiple uses. I'll turn the microphone over to Chess.
Thanks, Eliza. Hello, everybody. So good to be with you. And thank you to MCV MCA for the time today to talk to you about LMF. Very thrilled to be here. My name's Francesca Gundrum, and I go by Chess, and I'm the Director of Advocacy for Maine Audubon. My organization is the oldest and largest wildlife conservation organ in the state. We work to conserve Maine wildlife and wildlife habitat by engaging people in education, conservation, and action. And we have 30,000 members, supporters, and volunteers all across the state. And I will toss it to my colleague, Luke.
Thanks, Jess, and hi everyone. I'm Luke Frankel with the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and NRCM is the state's leading nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization dedicating to protecting and restoring and conserving Maine's environment now and for future generations. And so I'm in the Woods, Waters, and Wildlife program. We also work on sustainable Maine trash issues and climate and clean energy, as well as federal policy areas. And we have just almost 20,000 members and supporters statewide and beyond. I'm excited to chat with you all about LMF.
So a little background is, I think, useful. Here in Maine, our economy and our culture are rooted in our connection to the land and to the water. Today, outdoor recreation contributes $3 billion to our economy every year, and tourism generates $16 billion. Those two activities rely on access to the land and water. And yet by the mid to late 1980s, there was widespread recognition that the access that we had all enjoyed for so long was increasingly being lost to development pressure and changing land use patterns. In response, the legislature asked voters to approve a $35 million bond question to conserve places of statewide significance, and the voters responded with strong support. The Land for Maine's Future program was born. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of, it's not very often I read parts of the law to anyone, but this is more poetry than not. So and it says it better than I can. The statute reads, the legislature finds that Maine is blessed with an abundance of natural resources unique to the northeastern United States, that these natural resources provide Maine residents and visitors to the state with an unparalleled diversity of outdoor recreation opportunities during all seasons of the year, and a quality of life unmatched in this nation. That the continued availability of public access to these recreation opportunities and the protection of the scenic and natural environment are essential for preserving the state's high quality of life. That public acquisition programs have not kept pace with the state's expanding population and changing land use patterns, so that Maine ranks low among the states in publicly owned land as a percentage of total state area. That rising land values are putting the state's real estate in shoreland and resort areas out of reach to most Maine citizens, and that sensitive lands and resources of statewide significance are currently not well protected and are threatened by the rapid pace of development, and that public interest in the future quality and availability for all Maine people of lands for recreation and conservation is best served by significant additions of lands to the public domain. And so in those early years, LMF began protecting public access to some of the most iconic and beloved places across the state. Mount Kineo in Piscataquis County was added in 1990. The Namaquansett lands, also in Piscataquis County in 1990. Dodge Point in Lincoln County on the Damariscotta River in 1989. Expansion of the Mount Agamenticus lands in York County beginning in 1991, and the Aroostook Valley Trail in Aroostook County in 1992. But by the late 1990s, growing land use pressures caused the legislature to broaden the scope of the program to include the conservation of places of local and regional significance, and to allow land to be held by private entities, private conservation partners. In 2005, the legislature added the Working Waterfront program, and that has we'll go into further detail into some of the specific projects, but examples are the Great Wasp Lobster and Bait Company on Beals Island, several farms in the Albion and Unity region, and the Millinocket Forest property, which is working forest located just east of Baxter Park. Turn the microphone.
Yeah, so just to provide some more information on the nuts and bolts of the LMF program. So one important aspect of the program is that all LMF funds require a one-to-one match. And this is critical because it incentivizes private investment in land conservation. So just an example, Land Trust is looking to acquire a $200,000 property. LMF will, submit out requests for proposals, and the Land Trust, when they apply for that, they'll be expected to provide, if they're asking for $100,000, they'll be expected to contribute to that effort at least $100,000 on their own. So that's an important part of the program. Another important part is that most of the land conserved through LMF remains on the tax roll. So this helps ensure that even though the land is conserved, it's still contributing to the local municipal budgets. And so LMF properties, there's a mix of, municipalities and public entities that can own LMF lands, but a lot of LMF land is owned, projects happen by land trusts. And land trusts, approximately 98% of land conserved by land trusts in Maine, either those lands continue to pay property taxes or pay payment in lieu of taxes. So this is another key aspect of the program that helps support conservation. And then additionally, LMF projects are all community driven. The whole program really is community driven, and projects only happen between willing sellers and willing buyers. And in certain cases, projects also require municipal approval. So this really ensures that LMF projects happen in areas where they're really wanted. And then additionally, the LMF scoring system is designed in a way that strikes a balance between rural and urbanized areas. And so we're going to show a map of next of where all the projects are, but you can see that this has helped kind of ensure that the project has a pretty great geographic scope across the state.
Excellent. So, based on all of that wonderful background on LMF and the program, it's unsurprising that it is Maine's most successful land conservation program. So, we have managed to conserve land across all of Maine's 16 counties through this program since it was created in the late 80s. And this map, which NRCM created, thanks NRCM, you'll see lots of scattered points across the entire state. And all those different colored points, they're either farms, that's land protected, recreational water access sites, etc. Um, and you can see some more of this on their website. However, I'm going to just list through some of the raw numbers associated with this, the power of this program, including it's helped conserve 75 recreational water access sites, 45 farms, so that totals more than 10,000 acres across the entire state, 33 commercial working waterfront properties all along the coast, and then more than 1,200 miles of shoreland, more than 150 miles of former railroad corridors that have been are utilized for recreational trails now. And in total, more than 650,000 acres of conservation and rec lands that guarantee access for traditional outdoor recreational opportunities. So think hiking, hunting, birding, biking, fishing, trapping, all the above, pretty much. And then more than 333,000 acres of working forest lands that remain in private ownership, but with permanent land conservation agreements. Pretty powerful stuff. And we really want to bring this home with some examples. So we're going to spend the next few slides working through some specific examples. Some of them are favorites of ours, some hiking spots, and some others that are just really incredible things that this program has helped accomplish. So we'll roll through a few of those and we'll kick it off with Eliza talking about Cutler Coast.
I'm sure many of you recognize this view of the Cutler Coast, which was acquired with the support of the Land for Maine's Future program in 1990, and is now in the public land system operated by the Bureau of Public Lands. It is, as you see, a 12,234 acre reserve, which includes blueberry barrens, woodlands, peatlands, and these dramatic rocky headlands, which include pocket coves and cobble beaches. It's become an incredibly popular area. So if you want to hike it, or especially if you're hoping to camp, it's a good idea to get there early in the day because you'll find 10 miles of trails along the coast. You'll see extraordinary bird life. On a good day, you might see a whale. And ATV enthusiasts can explore 19 and a half miles of trail through the interior of the parcel.
Excellent. And next up, an example of how our state park system has benefited from the LMF program too, is the Aroostook State Park expansion project. So this took place just over 15 years ago. The Aroostook State Park was the first state park ever created in Maine in 1939. It's about 5 miles from Presque Isle, and it draws year-round residents to enjoy the beach, picnics, camping, hiking in the summer, cross-country skiing in the winter, and snowshoeing and snowmobiling. And with a grant from LMF, the state was able to expand the park by purchasing at a bargain sale price an almost 100-acre parcel, which was owned by the federal government, owned by DOT, again in 2010. So the addition, it really enhances the park's recreational capacity, which is really important for this region in particular, this resource, because it's in an area with very little other public land. And next up, Luke.
Yeah, next, well, another great example of a water access site is Hunter Cove at Rangeley Lake. So acquisition of this public water access property provides access to a popular fishing area on Rangeley Lake. For those of you, you might be familiar with the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. This is a popular stopping point along that route. And in addition to just the water access, the state agencies on the property also established a pedestrian portage trail from a parking area to a hand carry watercraft launch, again, showing why it's popular for the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. And additionally, the property also provides access for other recreational uses, including boating, swimming, picnicking, or any other daytime activities that, Mainers like to do all year round along the water. And as you can see in the bottom, this project, LMF contributed $100,000 and matching contributions that were contributed were $205,000.
Excellent. Thanks, Luke. And a good reminder, Luke mentioned at the top right, but LMF requires that one-to-one match, but more matching money is just a good part of the project application too. So sometimes it's more than one-to-one. Next up is an example, a farming example. So Randall Orchards Protection. This is located in Standish. I've gone and picked apples at this location myself. I wonder if I'm sure maybe I'm not alone for those of us in Southern Maine. So this orchard's been in active production for more than 100 years. So it's a multi-generational, family-owned working farm and also a working forest property. And in 2015, the landowner, Richard Randall, sold a conservation easement to protect the agricultural viability of the property and to also make sure that the agricultural soils were protected for the future of farming on that property. And it also helped to protect other lands and support wildlife habitat and connectivity with adjacent conservation lands, which is excellent. This is also a really wonderful part of the LMF program. Many LMF projects help to support wildlife habitat connectivity and general acquisition, which is obviously very important to my organization as our missions to conserve wildlife and wildlife habitat in the state, and one of the major reasons why we're super supportive of the program. But this orchard supplies apples to folks on site, so you can go and pick them yourself. And then it's also brings apples to major grocers in the region. And then you can see the LMF funds and the matching contributions in that bottom right corner.
And finally, to wrap up all our properties here, here's an example of one of LMF's working waterfront properties, and this is Moosabec Mussels, located in Jonesport. And this location is responsible for approximately, a quarter of Maine's mussel harvest, so it's a pretty significant working waterfront property. The site also lands, processes, and markets quahogs, periwinkles, lobsters, crabs, sea urchins, scallops, seaweed, clams, worms, and sea cucumbers, so a wide variety of things that are harvested in the Gulf of Maine. And in 2012, LMF, contributed funds to improve this site through the purchase of additional fishing vessel, as well as improving the mussel processing capacity at the site to meet new market expectations. And just to, drive home the fact that why LMF is an economic engine, this property directly employs 12 people. An additional 45 plus fishermen regularly land their catch at this property. So these sites really are essential for the local economy. And you can see down in the corner that LMF funds were 215,000, but the matching contributions were more than 3 times that amount.
So I hope we've made the case that conserving land is critical for recreational access and for the protection of our food system. As an aside, our agricultural systems and our seafood harvesting systems each contribute about $3 billion to the economy a year. But it's also one of the most essential things that we can do to address two of the most pressing environmental issues of our time, and those are climate change and biodiversity loss. If you're on this call, I'm hoping I don't need to convince you that climate change is a real threat. We've lived through examples over the past several years. We've seen loss of life, loss of property. It's a serious challenge to the state. We also are part of the world which is experiencing biodiversity loss. Life on Earth depends on the network of plants, animals, fungi that form ecosystems, and those populations are dropping. And so that land conservation is also very important for that purpose. We know that trees and plants, including marine-based plants, absorb carbon, hold it, and eventually contribute it to the soil. And open space allows both wildlife and plant species to move in response to warming temperatures. The most highly visible example of that we're all aware of is the concern around whale strikes, which has been an emotional issue. But the bottom line cause is that whales are moving north looking for colder waters, and they're not the only species doing that. So varied and connected habitats are essential to allowing those species to move and have unbroken, unfragmented habitat. So it's no wonder then that the Climate Action Plan calls for conserving 30% of our land by 2030. And yet in 2026, Maine is only at 22.5% conserved. And we need to really step it up if we'd like to meet that goal. At the very same time, development pressure has escalated across the state since the pandemic. You've seen it, I've seen it. And in this pivotal moment, LMF has expended or pledged virtually all of its funds. Conservation opportunities are at risk.
So, thank you, Eliza. And the Climate Action Plan, one of the recommendations from the subgroup that's been focusing on land and other kinds of natural resource conservation types, is to make sure that LMF is funded at $50 million every year. And that's the only way we'll be able to get to our 30 by 30 goal. And it's probably no surprise at this point that we don't have that. And we do not have a secure or long-term funding mechanism for the Land for Maine's Future program, which is a huge problem as it's Maine's most successful land conservation program. And that's something that all three of our organizations and a really, really enormous coalition is working to try and identify and secure for this program. But throughout its existence, it's been funded through a variety of different options. And it's starting off with a bond in 1987 for $35 million. And then the next year, a $3 million direct appropriation. And then 1999 rather, a $50 million bond. Biggest bond we've seen for LMF. And you'll see there's a couple more bonds that get scattered throughout the early 2000s, a couple in the 2010 eras, and a bit of a gap leading into most recently, our organizations helped to secure, with the support of some really wonderful LMF champions on the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee for the state legislature, $10 million a year for 4 years within the budget. And there's a little bit of an asterisk to this, but for pretty much it's the first time LMF had ever been funded in the budget in this way, which was huge. And if you look at a chart of how funds have been dumped into LMF and then come back out, it's immediate for the most part. Funds go in and they come right back out because there's such a need for all these different kinds of projects and all those. I mean, it's probably no surprise given the variety of different examples that the three of us just rolled through here. There's a lot of opportunity. We just need the money in the program to help us secure it.
Yeah, so as Chess outlined that funding timeline, it's probably no surprise that in order to have a program run for as long as LMF had and be as funded so many times, including, 6 different bonds, that the program has to be bipartisan and very popular among legislators. So just to provide some examples, over 100 conservation, environmental, sporting, fishing, farming, forestry, and other organizations have supported the program through the years. And additionally, 100 municipalities from all across the state have also supported the program. So there is support among various different constituencies across the state, and that's why it's been able to, be so successful through the years. And that's really because, as we've kind of mentioned throughout the presentation today, it's really an economic engine. It helps drive Maine's agricultural sector, which is worth about $11.7 billion, the forest product sector, which is $8.5 billion, the tourism sector, which is around $7 billion, and then again, Maine's kind of seafood harvest industry, which is around $3.3 billion. So legislators recognize it's an economic engine. It's got broad support. So we're hoping to, carry that support forward and try to gain funding for the program.
And as we've said, the program is virtually out of funds. You may have seen an announcement for the Working Waterfront program. That request for proposals was for $1.2 million. Meanwhile, there is a piece of property for sale in Winter Harbor for $4.9 million. So it's hardly enough to meet the need. And that program is separate from the other streams of funding, which are virtually all pledged. You may also have seen the headline this week that Wyman's Blueberries has listed nearly 800 acres of blueberry barrens in the mid-coast for sale. So the need is enormous. Our conservation partners tell us that they are losing opportunities. The pressure since the pandemic is on every corner of the state. And climate change has not slowed down. So now is the time to invest in our working lands, in our recreational economy, in climate resilience, and in the beauty and open space that define our state. And there are several different ways to go about doing that. We're open to any of them, frankly, but one that we like very much is sponsored by Senator Russell Black, who is a farmer in Franklin County. He's a member of the Republican caucus of the Maine Senate, and it would be a $50 million bond, consistent with previous bonds, the largest having been in 1999. It is in the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. They have not yet voted on it, and it will be part of the mix.
Yeah, another bill to fund LMF that we're tracking is LD 593, which is also sponsored by Senator Russell Black. And this bill calls for, rather than a bond, a $10 million per year general fund appropriation. And that $10 million per year figure is about what the program would need to kind of keep operating at the level it has been in prior years. And this bill had a hearing last year during the first session, and it was unanimously approved by the ACF committee. So again, reinforcing that the program's got broad bipartisan support, and then also passed the House and Senate. So it's currently sitting on the special appropriations table. So it is one of the options in the mix that will be, looked at going forward as the session continues.
Excellent. And the really the last of the sort of big potential opportunities for us to fund LMF this session is a bill, LD 1312, which is sponsored by Senator Teresa Peirce of Cumberland. And this bill, it's a little wonky, it's creative, but like Eliza said, we are looking to get money in whatever ways we possibly can for this really critical program. So what it would do is it would direct a portion of the interest from the Budget Stabilization Fund, or it's commonly known as the Rainy Day Fund. And that fund is a non-lapsing interest-bearing revenue account, which is used to offset general fund revenue shortfalls. And occasionally, including very recently, used for one-time expenditures as well. So sort of your safety net account, if you will. So directing a portion of the interest from our rainy day fund to LMF. And that bill has had hearing and is also within the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. And we expect it'll be, this idea will be a part of the conversation, the larger funding conversation, budget conversation rather, that's happening right now and will likely be really thoroughly discussed by the end of March. And with that, what can you do to help us? And I think I'm the first one here. One of the first things you can do to help us, and Maggie is going to reiterate this at the end of the program as well, is to contact your lawmaker. We need help, especially if we're working on a bond campaign. In order to pass a bond in the legislature, you need 2/3 of the Maine House and the Maine Senate to approve it, to send it on to lawmakers. It's a pretty tall order. It's been done. It's been done recently for the Maine Trails Bond is a really great example, and that took a Herculean effort, certainly from many organizations and really championed by NRCM, but takes a lot. It takes a whole lot to pass a bond. And so one of the things you can do is to help us keep the drumbeat going on LMF. So contacting your lawmaker either through phone calls, you can look up their phone numbers and you can leave a message with the Maine Senate or Maine House, and they will leave those messages on their desks. And then also MCV has very generously created an email action form that you can interact with after the program. They'll send out that follow-up email and you can send your message and definitely personalize it too. That's really the best thing you can do for messages to your lawmakers. They receive a lot of, and we rely on action alerts as nonprofit advocacy organizations. But we're all sending out all kinds of alerts and they're getting lots and lots of email, not only from us, certainly. So take the extra step to share with them what's your favorite LMF property or something you're looking forward to in visiting an LMF property, or just share something about how this program has personally impacted you, your family, your community. So that's the first thing you can do. And the second thing,
The second thing you can do is you can contact your lawmaker in person at the LMF Day of Action that our three organizations, along with the LMF Coalition, which is comprised of dozens of other organizations. We're hosting an LMF Day of Action at the State House on Thursday, March 12th. So you can show up. And additionally, ahead of that LMF Day of Action on March 12th, there'll be a virtual Day of Action also hosted by the LMF Coalition on March 2nd. So be on the lookout for emails about both of those events. They're a great opportunity to, even if you haven't had experience going to the State House and talking to your legislator in person, this program is designed to, help you equip you with the information and experience you need to discuss LMF with your lawmakers. So strongly encourage you to attend either one of those events as well.
And we want to assure you that you don't need to be an expert on this issue. You have a right to your opinion, and speaking from the heart is the most valuable thing you can do. So come and speak from the heart in person, or you could write a letter to the editor to your local paper, both your daily, don't forget those weeklies because people read them. And often, many of them are free. People like to pick them up. And believe me, lawmakers read them. So write about your favorite place, write about your favorite activity. If you have experience, if you're a business owner or have a personal experience that relates back to the economy, that's very helpful as well. And the fun thing that you can do is that you can visit an LMF property anywhere, but you can find one near you as we showed with the map. And find the LMF sign and take a photo and tag yourself and tag our organizations because LMF is a wonderful program. It is the basis of so many people's joy and sense of refreshment. And we should celebrate that. And we should make it widely known how important these issues are to us. So thank you. And we are open for questions.
Thank you all so much. That was so wonderful. And we have gotten quite a few questions, but I feel like I want to start out with something that I think we can all relate to and we are probably thinking about is we know how much Mainers across the board care about the outdoors, care about being able to get outside and recreate. But we know that also not everybody's able to be involved in policy making, able to keep up with what's happening at the State House. For those folks who really care about these issues but might not necessarily connect the dots to supporting LMF, what would you say? Why would you tell them to care about this program? And do you have any advice for the rest of us when we're talking to people about why they need to support LMF? Big
I hope,
question.
I hope we've convinced you that it contributes strongly to our economy, that it is critical for protecting our food systems, our locally grown and locally harvested foods. It is essential for protecting, doing all that we can to slow climate change and to adapt to it and to protect the diversity of life on Earth, making sure that there's habitat for both plants and animals and insects.
And just adding on that, I think land conservation is one of the most fundamental things we can do to protect our environment. And oftentimes, protecting land and conserving it is a lot more efficient and cost effective than remediating that land after environmental harms have done. So it's really land conservation is a really great investment in terms of environmental protection and kind of climate, water quality, habitat. It kind of covers the basis. So it's really some of the most fundamental things. And this program has really been core to land conservation efforts in Maine for the past 30 plus years. So
And I'll add one more note, even though both my colleagues just covered it, I think really beautifully, is that this program is personal. I would hazard a very safe guess that every single person on this program has benefited from the Land for Maine's Future program. And maybe it doesn't take too many steps to figure out exactly how. Could be a property right in your backyard. It could be some fresh veggies you enjoy in your community. Could be a hiking trip you take or a hunting trip. It's an amazing program, and I challenge you all, if you're talking to lawmakers or otherwise, figure out where your LMF connection is directly, because that's really the stuff that's going to change some hearts and minds and making sure we try and get some funding for this really important program.
It's also the lands that the program conserves are open to the public for free of charge and therefore are available for educational purposes. I think we all recognize the need for outdoor education. Um, and I'll just summarize with Joni Mitchell's words, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone. Maine has something that other places don't have, and that's why we're having a moment right now, and we could lose it in a heartbeat.
Thank you so much, all of you. And that definitely connects to what I was just about to ask, thinking about how much we need this funding right now. And one, I was wondering, are there projects currently waiting that could move forward right away if the funding continues? And then also, how do you identify these properties and which ones to conserve? Two questions, but
So this is a grassroots program. Local folks identify places that they love and tend to reach out to entities in the profession of conserving property, and bring those forward.
And what we're, I know it's a two-parter, so you also want to know about how does it work? If someone puts a project forward, who gets to make the decision? So we'll answer that in a moment. But Um, we're part of, and we covered this, but it's a really diverse coalition of groups that are involved in trying to secure LMF funding. And so we're just a couple of the groups that are leading the charge, but we hear from some of the really large land conservation organizations and small, but in particular recently, some of the um, conservation organizations like Trust for Public Land or the Conservation Fund that are saying we are losing out on projects. We're putting in the work. We found some really good projects. There are people that want to work with us, but we need LMF to help us support the transfer and the acquisition of these. And a thumbs up from one of our colleagues from one of those organizations right now. Exactly. It's a really urgent need. It's happening right now. And Eliza hit this earlier too, but there's a lot of development pressure in Maine right now. Post-pandemic in particular, we've had a lot of people move to the state, and the pressures are really, really great. And Maine has some really, I'll pick on housing for a moment. Maine has some really, really, really big housing goals. According to a Maine State Housing Report, the state's goal is to um, build more than 80,000 units by 2030, and that's to keep up with what they have projected as sort of the growth we're going to need, and also to keep up with the growth that's already existed in the state previously. Um, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on all different kinds of lands all across the state. So just one example of the development pressure and why it's really quite urgent. And then did one of you want to handle the how does this work? If someone has an LMF project, Eliza, you or maybe Luke, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, they submit similar to what happened with Working Waterfront, request for proposals, and there's a board and strict review criteria. So then people submit proposals for projects, and then based on how those projects score, they get awarded in the various funding cycles. And then just one more point on why it's important to have a program and why we're missing out on projects currently because the program's not funded. I'm sure every land trust around the state has like a nice laundry list of wishes. If they were to get some funds, what priority projects they would like to conserve. And a lot of these lands, there's a lot of other development pressures. A lot of these lands and these transactions that can happen, they're finite timelines. And so the amount of time that the program is not funded and that various funding streams are not available, some of those timelines might lapse and then those opportunities will be lost to conserve. So it's really important to have kind of various funding mechanisms on hand for a lot of these land trusts and other organizations so they can capitalize on these opportunities that, sometimes have these finite windows.
And I mean, $35 million in 1987 sounds like a lot of money. Can I ask, do you know what that would look like if we invested at that rate now? And it's okay if you don't, but just wondering, like, what level of investment would that look like right now in 2026?
I'm not the person who can answer that question. And of course, land values have increased since 1986. So it's a complicated question to answer.
Yeah,
But I
totally.
think they've and sorry to interrupt you, Maggie, but that person who asked that question identified something, right? That we know we need just to meet our existing conservation goals, which we're not going to at this point, really, to conserve 30% of land in Maine by 2030. We need 50 million a year to do that from LMF. And LMF is just one piece of the land conservation puzzle. So you can imagine that we need a lot more money, certainly, than we did in the earlier days.
Yeah. And Lynette, one of your colleagues, did let me know $35 million in 1987 would be $100 million in 2026. So that is the level of investment that we were looking at in 1987, which I just think is really, really crazy and important to point out. And thinking about who supports this, we've talked about how it is a bipartisan issue, or it really should be. And so I've been wondering about what you're hearing in the legislature. Is there any resistance? And also wondering if the governor has showed any support for a specific funding proposal. So what's going on at the State House right now?
I have
Um,
not heard outright resistance or opposition to the program. I think that we're in a short session in an election year, and there are a lot of feelings. So sorting through how money will get spent is the order of the day, and a lot of factors will go into that. Um, Governor Mills has been a supporter of Land for Maine's future. I think it remains to be seen whether there will be a potential amendment to the budget or we're all waiting for a new projection of revenues in early March, which will tell us where we stand. Also, as Chess pointed out, bond questions require a two-thirds vote of the legislature, and that's a very, very high bar. So getting there is not easy, and that's why we're here today to ask you all for your support, to express your strong support for the program so that it will get funded one way or another.
Yeah, and maybe I'll jump in and then Chess, you can round us out if anything. I think with the yeah, when we've had conversations with people, some legislators are more familiar with LMF than others. But there's a broad, people like the program, like the idea, but like most environmental issues, it's difficult to, when funding is finite, how does the legislature prioritize things for funding? And so it's tough to elevate environmental priorities often, and this is what we grapple with in a lot of our initiatives, that we push over things like healthcare and other urgent needs, housing around the state, things like that, or economies and industries that are really struggling. And so I think what we've been trying to do with our messaging is show that LMF really is an economic engine and really helps support and is really fundamental to what makes Maine so special. And so I think that's, going to be the real challenge is, showing that it's worthy to have, a slice of the pie at the end of the day and really needs it in order to because the program is so foundational in a lot of the ways that we've mentioned.
Right. I think you both nailed it. And we'll assure everybody on this call that we're a team of many who are working to make LMF a very relevant conversation topic every day that we can in the halls of the State House. We're lobbying folks on LMF every time we're in Augusta. One example, yesterday we had a briefing for lawmakers, so we served them lunch. It's one of the best ways to get lawmakers in the room. If there's any on the call, I think you would agree, as they work really hard. And this is a citizen legislature, so they're just running around handling many things at once. And anytime there's an opportunity to gather over a meal, they usually come and join. So we were able to speak to several dozen lawmakers all at once and it was pretty. I'd say maybe 50-50 split in terms of who showed up in terms of their party affiliation to listen to us for talk about LMF. So that's one example, and then of course we need all of you to help us continue to make your lawmakers care and make this program relevant and help us demonstrate that the needs are urgent because they really are.
Thank you. And so, thinking about all of the incredible work you're doing at the State House, if we do get that two-thirds, what is the next step? Does it go to voters then?
If in fact it should, if the legislature were to approve a bond question, then yes, it would go to voters for ratification this fall. That's, as we said, one of several options.
And maybe an important note too that there are several bonds that have been forwarded, several bond ideas. So there's transportation bond, there's an agriculture bond, there's housing bonds. We're not just the only bond in the mix, and that's helpful, and also it's a challenge as well. So there's having a variety of different bonds out there can help with some negotiating to try and win over the two-thirds votes if there's a certain bond that's more interesting to one party versus the other. But it's still a challenge. We're not the only bond conversation, certainly.
And definitely in terms of in the bond conversation, if it does, if that is the avenue that's pursued and then it does pass through the legislature, generally we feel pretty good. Obviously, there'd be a lot of work to ensure that, it's approved by the voters in November, but generally environmental initiatives, when they're on the ballot, Mainers tend to be really supportive of them. We saw that more recently with the Trails bond. And then LMF, all the bonds that have been appropriated through the years has had a good track record at the ballot box in Maine.
And so, if folks are planning to either reach out to their lawmakers, attend the March 12th lobby day, I kind of wanted to ask you, what kinds of stories do you think resonate with lawmakers the most? And do you have any suggestions for folks as they're thinking about what to bring up to their legislators?
I think what resonates with lawmakers depends on the lawmaker. But if you're from a coastal community, those working waterfronts might very well be an issue that resonates. If you, I'm just using myself as an example. We've hiked at at the Cutler Coast, and that's not a small trip. We build a vacation around it, and we stay in local communities, and we eat out. We spend money on gasoline. We're So it's an example of a destination helping to drive the economic development in a rural place. It's also perfectly appropriate and I think very compelling to me to talk about close to home opportunities. Not everybody has the time or the gas money or the ability to get to the remote places. We all need someplace close by where we can just get out on the trails, ideally with our families on weekends or after work. So I think that's why we say be personal about it. Speak from your, you don't have to use our words. You can use your own experience, and that's what's going to resonate by far the most.
And Luke could expand on this too, but anytime we bring folks, any of our organizations bring folks to the State House, we don't, throw you into the ring without giving you a really good pep talk first. We help walk you through the process, help you understand what to expect when you go upstairs and walk around the halls with us, because it can be, it's a really different experience. And I think everyone should try it, hopefully more than once, and hopefully for the LMF Action Day. But we'll help you work with you one-on-one, put you into teams. You'll have a lot of support going into something like that, since it's a big ask, but one we hope you all will receive from us.
And one more point on the message, just hearing, sitting through a lot of LMF hearings and hearing, what testimony seems to motivate lawmakers. It's obviously great to highlight, how much you love this LMF property and your thing. But I think a lot of the most potent messages have been, the opportunities, the land that has been not conserved and as a result succumbed to development, the farms that have turned into subdivisions and things like that. Those kind of stories, I think also can be potent to certain lawmakers. And so if you have a good example of that, I encourage you to bring that forward, and that, helps express kind of the urgency of what, a lot of our working and natural lands are facing today.
And so thank you so much. Thinking about like outside of the legislature, outside of the environmental groups that are supporting LMF, are there any other coalition members that represent like business organizations or the wood products industry? And I'd love to hear if you have any suggestions for folks if they have connections with these kind of people, like the Maine Chamber of Commerce. How do we get them to show up on March 12th? And how important it is to build these relationships in support of LMF.
We work closely with the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine and other outdoor enthusiasts of all stripes. That's an important set of relationships. We work closely with Maine Outdoor Brands, who are all the folks who help provide the gear and the opportunities to get outside. Those are important voices. And I think, just as with other issues, just starting that conversation is how to get started, because by and large, you're going to find that those of us who live in Maine do so because we want these opportunities. And it doesn't take long before you find that shared love of place and activity. So just reach out, just try.
I love that. Anything to add, Chesser, Luke? Okay. Thank you. And so just thinking about the next couple of months, what should folks be watching out for? Should we be making sure they're all signed up to your newsletters? Should they be watching for another action beyond the actions we'll be asking them today?
I'd like to toss into the mix that so we've asked you to speak to your own legislators, and what you might get for a response is, oh yeah, I love that program. I'll support it. I'll co-sponsor. I'll do, you know, but that's just level one. So if they are enthusiastic, we need them to take the next step. We need to ask them to speak to members of their leadership and let them know that this is important to them and they want it to be part of the mix of the spending decisions made at the end of the legislature. They should speak to their colleagues who serve on the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee, which will be making those spending decisions. So, yes, we want you to vote for it. We also want you to speak up and do a little more as legislators.
Yeah, and just there's a lot of we highlighted a lot of different funding vehicles that are in the mix. There's the bond, the general fund appropriations. Also, we mentioned that highlighted the budget that's being worked on in these coming weeks. So I know we're all going to be closely tracking as well as our partners. And as opportunities, as there tends to be like one of the options tend to rise up, and there's an opportunity, for either a public hearing or a venue to ahead of a vote or something, we'll all be communicating that to our membership, our various memberships, as well as the big coalition, all the organizations in the Environmental Priorities Coalition. That information will be getting out to you all, so you can, be timely. I think it's important to keep that drumbeat, and as Eliza and others have mentioned, like contact your legislators ongoing. But when you have a specific ask for a specific vote, we'll be sure to communicate that out to you all as the moving target settles into view in one location.
Right. So there to be very direct with the ask, definitely sign up for our action alerts for all of our organizations. There's probably some amount of crossover with the folks on this call, but if you don't receive action alerts from NRCM or AMC or Maine Audubon, jump in because there's a lot of other stuff we're working on too that you're probably interested in, and it's helpful to hear from us, and we keep folks as engaged as possible throughout the legislative session.
Oh my gosh. Thank you three so, so much. I have personally learned a lot about LMF today, and I'm sure so many folks on the call have too. You're going to be getting a follow-up email, everyone who registered, that has a link that you can directly reach out to your legislator. And like Chess said in the beginning, please personalize it, make it your own. Let your legislator know why this is personally important to you. And we'll also, if folks are interested in writing a letter to the editor, the MCV team is so happy to help support that. So just respond to my email and we can get you any resources or support you need. And please show up on March 12th for the LMF Day of Action. We'll all be there, and I know we'd love to see you all. So thank you so much. Thank you, Chess and Eliza and Luke. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.